reason we're here is to help people who are struggling to put food on their table. Someone who is doing their part is Morgan Cameron Ross. He runs the Old Toronto series.
Today, we're talking about the history of Kensington Market, the Canadian National Exhibition, Parkdale, the little Jamaican neighborhood along Eglinton West, of Liberty Village, Ontario Place.
Super cool platform dedicated to sharing our city's history, but he also encourages his community to give back. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about the Old Toronto series, where it started, where you got the idea.
So the Old Toronto series is just kind of a general history series about, obviously, the history of Toronto. Kind of short-form documentaries, and I try to engage the public with a whole bunch of different ways of approaching history. So, really cool, nerdy stuff.
Really cool, nerdy stuff. And you're a musician, but you had been studying history, and that's kind of where you got started?
Yeah, so I was a musician for my living for years. Got out of that, went back to grad school for history, focused on Toronto history, and now I run Old Toronto series, and it's taken up most of my life now.
I mean, you've got such a huge following. What is it about our city's history that you think just captures people's attention?
I think celebrating Toronto history is one of kind of the few bonding things going on right now. Showing people about their city means that they have an opportunity to kind of celebrate their city. So Old Toronto series highlights a whole bunch of things like that, but that really kind of creates a very supportive culture, and it's generational, meaning a teenager can find Toronto history cool, his parents do, and the grandmother might as well. So it's this kind of intergenerational, cool bonding thing because we all love Toronto, and finding out the history of your city it's cool.
One of the videos I was just watching was Ontario Place, which I feel like with all the conversations happening right now, people would gravitate towards something like that.
Exactly. So, there's this very, very powerful group of people who love Ontario Place. And there's so many of us that really care about Ontario Place. So one of the videos I did was the history of Ontario Place. And I mean, the entire province is rallying around our efforts to save Ontario Place and keep it as a place for the people. And, celebrating these locations in our lives.
We talked about just the work that you also do to give back to the community and encourage your many, many, many followers to do the same. And one of the organizations you work with is the Daily Bread Food Bank. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so Old Toronto Series has teamed up with the Daily Bread Food Bank for the last 3 years. We've fundraised over $33,000 for people with food insecurities around Toronto, and we're doing it again this year. So it's a real source of pride for me. So obviously we're fundraising, through our oldtorontoseries.com, through our Instagram. We're giving $5 from every calendar sale because I'm kind of nerdy. We sell calendars, and I take all this pride in our Old Toronto Series calendars. So each year we do $5 from the sale of every calendar at oldtorontoseries.com. So there's just, I find it to be a moral imperative. If you have a huge following of people and they love their city, I really feel as though, we should be encouraging people to help.
Yes, and we know the need is so great. It just keeps getting greater.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're all upset and watching how vulnerable people are. I think since last year, there's been a 51% increase in visits to Toronto food banks and stuff like that. So, I think one of the most, I don't want to say touching, but one of the most important things of the last few years is when I was fundraising for the Daily Bread Food Bank, and a couple of my friends took me aside and they said, when I was a kid, my family visited the food bank. And I hadn't known. So it's just, it touches so many people that we may not realize need it.
Morgan, thank you so much. If people want to check out the Old Toronto series, tell us how they can do that.
Oh, everywhere. We are everywhere. Instagram Old Toronto, YouTube Old Toronto series, Facebook. I am everywhere.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
At the heart of sounds of the season is music, of course. This year's lineup features a mix of longtime Toronto talent and some